let us head back to 1851. We're in California at what is known as the height of the gold rush, which is a phenomenon that had hundreds and thousands of Americans clamoring to head west in search of what? In search of gold, in search of striking it big, in search of prosperity. Essentially a ticket to a new life, which for many Americans at the time was filled with struggle and hard work and burdensome debt. And hundreds and thousands of people made this journey, even though it was arduous, very challenging, either by land or by sea. But they did it. Why? They did it for the same reason that you guys are here today. They had the spirit of entrepreneurship. They had hope, and they had faith, and they had a belief that somehow they would be the lucky ones. One man who made this journey is named R.U. Darby. He said to his nephew, he said, "You and I, we're heading west. Pack your things." And so they did. They brought an axe and a shovel and a pick and wasted no time at all digging for gold. Darby was fervently excited, thought he would be the lucky one, and for good reason. Because he did. He struck gold. Him and his nephew, the second they started digging, actually hit upon a vein of gold so deep that when they sent the ore to Colorado to be smelted, the smelter said, "Do not stop digging. Keep going." Can you imagine? Darby and his nephew, oof, we're the lucky ones. And they, as fast as they can, said, "We have to head back east because we certainly can't do it with one axe, one shovel." And so that's what they did. They headed back east, rallied their family and friends, and said, "This is the closest ticket that you have to a new life." And at this point in time, this is the best thing these Americans had heard, right? So obviously they gave Darby and his nephew the money, and they were thrilled. They bought the equipment, headed back west. Darby and his nephew again made the trip, and again, wasted no time getting to work digging. Because when you're sitting on money like that, you waste no time. And so day one, day two, working tirelessly. I mean, this is exhausting work, Darby and his nephew. Digging, 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 but nothing is coming up. The same mine that had ore in droves 3 weeks ago was now not producing anything. And so they said to themselves, "That's fine, it's okay, we're here, we've made the effort, let's keep digging." So they did, day 3, day 4. And by the end of day 4, these two men are wild in a frenzy. What's happening? They're confused, it's maddening, they're frustrated, they're scared, they're angry. It's inexplicable to them why the same ore isn't being delivered to them or coming up from the ground. So at the end of day 4, what do? At the end of day 4, Darby says to his son, to his nephew, "We gotta head back east. There's just nothing we can do." So that's what they do. They make that trip back, but not before they sell their equipment to a junk seller for a pittance of what they bought it for. 3 days later, the junk guy says, "Listen, why can't I piggyback on the same spirit of entrepreneurship that these men had? I'm gonna take my risk, take this risk, take the chance." So he did, except he had the foresight to bring with him a mining expert. So the two men go back to the mine, the mining expert does his calculations, looks at it, and says to this junk seller, he says, "Hey, your friend Darby, he did have a mine, he did strike a vein of gold, but that vein of gold is just 3 feet away from where he was originally digging. Darby didn't take into consideration fault lines, which move the earth, right, and moved his vein of gold. And so now this junk man thinks to himself, interesting, shoos off this expert, because now he's sitting on a load of gold, and from that day forward, never sells a piece of junk again, turns out to be a millionaire 10 times over. And obviously, word of this gets back to Darby, who, after he made the trip back home, is inconsolable, utterly defeated. He had stopped 3 feet short of what were his millions, his life savings, right? It would ultimately change his life. You better believe that Darby took that lesson to heart and never had to learn it again. When he found that out, he vowed that he would never stop short 3 feet from his millions. He just had a dogged persistence. And what that meant for him was that he turned his life around. He ended up being one of the most successful life insurance salesmen ever, grossing annually $1 million a year, which now is a staggering amount of money per year, but then, at the turn of the century, unthinkable. But Darby vowed. He said, "This is the lesson that I'm going to use for the rest of my life." You are here today because your next big breakthrough is 3 feet away. Whether you are a blogger, an author, starting your own media company, maybe you're just here to build the next big version of yourself. Likely in this room, you're probably all 4. You're here for a reason, and you are here to build. And that's not just Darby's story. That is also your story. Because if I know one thing, it's that you have suffered through failure, rejection, defeat, and loss so staggering it makes your head spin, like Darby's head was spinning when he stopped short. But what if you could alchemize your feelings of defeat? If I asked you right now, in fact, let's do that, think about a moment of professional or personal defeat where you were just spent. You couldn't get back up. What do you feel? It's not like we're all raising our hands, announcing how we feel. Why? Because we feel shame. We feel embarrassed. We don't want to think about the things that we've screwed up, right? We don't want to think about our failures. It's not a fun exercise, I know. I've been there. But what if you could, like Darby, learn that lesson and take and alchemize your experiences when you do feel defeat and turn it into something that propels you and pushes you forward and helps you take that risk and take that action and produce what you're here to produce. Napoleon Hill, who wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich, it is one of the most important books ever written, and I mean that. If you haven't read it, you should go out after this conference and buy it instantly. It will change your life. And I say that with no drama. He was also a colleague of Darby's at the time who, he wrote in this book, he said, all of those who succeed go through heartbreaking struggle. And the turning point in the lives of those who do end up succeeding happens at some crisis point where they are introduced to their other selves. The lesson that we learn from Darby, and what I am challenging you to see today, is that you are introduced to your other self in your moments of defeat, in your moments where you feel you are at rock bottom, in your moments where there's absolutely nothing left for you to give. Because while we chase success and innovation, we bang our heads against a wall trying to be innovative and be creative, right? That's what 90% of New York City, where I'm living, currently does, searching for innovation and creativity. Meanwhile, we miss where it really lies, which is in the moments where we feel defeat and we solve our own problems. But in those moments when we feel that defeat, it's very hard to see beyond what we're feeling, right? All we feel is grief and sorrow and fear, so claustrophobic, it's hard to breathe. I have been there. I once had a professional opportunity that was like sent from God. It was perfect for me. It was designed, it was absolutely everything I could have ever wanted. But like, the situation where you get what you ultimately want, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I wasn't ready for it. For some reason, and I don't know the reason why some experiences affect us differently than others, I was taken under by this experience. Maybe it was because I didn't want to fail. Maybe it was because it was such a high-profile job. Maybe it was because I knew it would rocket propel my career, and it did. For all of those reasons, I didn't want to look stupid, didn't want to fail. I was utterly terrified, and I know you've been there. It was hard for me to breathe, and I shut down. I was in so much fear that I went to doctors and they said, if you don't figure out your fear, your body is going to shut down. And it did. I lost 20 pounds. I was waking up with anxiety. It was terrifying. And my old methods weren't working. Yes, family and friends were great. They were there. But it wasn't what I needed at the time. It wasn't enough. Meditating, walking, reading, journaling, everything we're told to do wasn't enough. So what did I do? Well, I did the next best thing for me at the time, which was I started interviewing people. I started talking to authors. I started talking to business people. I started talking to people who inspired me. And I started interviewing them about their fear and how they'd overcome struggle and stress and terror in their lives. And I did this for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. I'm still doing it today. Is that intuitive? Is that natural for someone to do when they're in a moment of fear? To start interviewing random people about fear? It doesn't even make sense to me as I say it today, except that was what came to my mind to do, and that is what I did. The irony of that is that magazine now, it's turned into a magazine that over 15,000 people read, all about overcoming fear. Did I know for 1 second at the time that I was building something? That I was building a magazine? Did I have 1 ounce of gray matter that thought anyone else besides me was interested in this topic? No. I was just solving my own need. I had to innovate out of this situation of terrible fear. And I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit that position, but I didn't. And so I had to innovate and figure out a way to make it work. And that is where the phrase, necessity is the mother of invention, comes from. Why? It is because you have to solve your own need and be inventive about it before you start solving the world's problems and start being innovative and searching for creativity. The elevator to success is broken. Take the stairs. It's a quote by actress, comedian Jennifer Lewis. Because show me real success, not fleeting success, although I will take both, thank you very much, but real success is based on rock bottom. The people who have tasted it will tell you it is mishap after mishap after mishap, defeat after defeat after defeat that gets you there. And those at the top will tell you they have built from rock bottom, where every last ounce of strength they had, they excavated and dug out the potential and the opportunity of the moment that they had in front of them, whether that was the moment of utter defeat. And that is what I am asking you guys to do today, is to see that that is where your gold is, because that is where you are your most vulnerable and your most creative and your most productive and innovative. You have to innovate your way out. And when you start building from there, when you start actually building from that deep part of yourself, that is when you play in the realm of entrepreneurs, of change makers, of the leaders whose stories we tell today, like Darby and Stevie Wonder and Steve Jobs. They don't all have to be Steves, by the way. That is when you play in this realm, in this big realm. And if you're here, you want to play in that big realm. I know you do. You want to have a big life. You want to make a big impact. And I hate to be the messenger of terrible news, but if you're here to do big things, life is going to continually and continually deliver you problems. It's not just going to say, John, he's good. No more problems from him. He's fine. Unfortunately, it's not like that. I wish it were. You are not sitting here today just as gritty Detroiters with hustle, as they like to call us, right, in the news. You are that. Of course you are. But you are also fearless. You're also smart. You know that rock bottom can be what you use to build from. And when you start building from there, when you learn the lesson that Darby is teaching us, your job isn't just to focus on success and innovation. It is to pay attention to where your gold really is. It is to pay attention to the moments of defeat. And when you find those moments, it is up to you to continually, one after another, alchemize them into pushing you forward, into propelling you to what you are here to do, and to think counterintuitively and see beyond what you are feeling in that moment of defeat to the potential and opportunity of what it can be. When you build from there, that is when you can be and build your most creative, your big life, your big career. It's from that space that you build. And personally, then you become your best and most useful self. That's what I've discovered for myself, for my own life. And that, my friends, is a far better and more honest and more heartening story of this city and its people that I want to tell, that you can tell, and that we should all be telling. But you have to make those 3 feet, and you will, because that's where your next big breakthrough is. Thank you.